What's up, guys? Welcome back to Guys Night Gaming painting tutorials for a noob. So last time we went over thinning paints for miniatures. If you haven't seen that, I'll leave that up in the tab up above. But if you have seen that or you know how to thin paints, then what do we do with them now? Is what I want to go over. So kind of a step-by-step tutorial. So for this video I actually asked viewers what colors I should use to paint a couple of objects. I chose two swords, two link swords. And in this video I'll demonstrate how to create your base coats with those colors, layering thin paints to create color gradients, different types of texturing, and then just color blending in general. So let's get into it. So before we start, if you're new, I realize some of these terms might not mean too much to you, so I'll just go over a few examples of what I'm talking about here. So we can see on our barbarian here how we have some color blending going on pretty much all over. So we have some blending on the coat between the darker colors and the lighter colors that are on the higher points of the folds of the coat. We also see the same thing here on the boots for the barbarian. And then if we look at the axe head, we can see some blending from the lighter white colors to the black colors, and then the flame effect or the hot metal effect I have on the tip. And that all comes from layering coats of paint. Stormtroopers for Star Wars Legion, I have made custom cloaks for them to mimic kind of a leather look, and I used stippling as a texture method. That's probably my favorite texture method. I like the look of it, and I like how the colors layer. We'll go over that. So one of the first steps to being a better painter, I think, is learning how to thin your paints. And now that we've kind of got that first step out of the way, we can move on now to how to utilize that. And if you did miss that video, feel free to go back, pause this video, but come back and watch that so you can kind of get that first step in mind. This is perfect if you're new to painting or if you're struggling to get started or afraid to start. This is a good place to be. So once paints are thinned, we can do pretty much anything with them. Base coats, blending, highlighting, texturing, creating different levels of transparency, and that's what we're going to go over here. And with these link swords, we'll go ahead and get started and use those different colors. So I was tasked with one to be blue and silver, and one to be silver with white highlights. So let's get into how I actually did this. My first step with these swords are to lay down a base coat to kind of map out where I want my highlights to be and I want my texturing to be. And I'll start with this, the blue sword here. I'll work my way up with just one layer of thin paint from the bottom of the hilt all the way up to a little past the middle of the blade, and then I'll slightly feather the blue into the black. So I'm going to utilize the black too. That's the black primer. That will help the paint stick. And for the base coat, towards the bottom of the hilt, we're just going to keep painting over that with the blue until it looks like you can't see the black through it pretty much. Now this will take a few coats, and it's not everybody's favorite part because it's probably the longest part of painting when you're painting something, but I enjoy it as it starts to bring life into whatever you're painting. On the blue blade here, you'll see that the base coat quickly goes into a less transparent blue, and then I'll move into a stippling to create a texture towards the edge of the tip of the blade on the top. And then the goal is to just create some interesting textures to give the blade a unique look, and we'll do that by layering different stipples with our brush here. And it's not a different color of paint, it's not a different paint brush. What we're doing is we have the thin paint, and we'll lay one layer of stipples. Those will dry, and then when we do stipples over it again, we can kind of close that area in some while we do the stipples, and the next set of stipples will lay over the other ones, and that'll create different levels of opacity with the blue paint on the blade, creating different shades of blue. So that will create texture on the blade for us. And then the blades of the swords, I'm actually going to color all the way in. I'm going to paint them all the way in to full opacity on the blue one. And then I'll do something a little different on the silver one here in just a minute. So my last touches on the blue blade, I actually got a lighter color blue that's tiptoeing on turquoise, and I mixed that with some of the original blue I used, and I did some small stippling down the center just to kind of do a little bit of highlighting to create just a different value in the paint that's on the blue blade to make it pop just a little bit more. It's not super bright or offensive or anything. It just is. It's just there so you can see it make a difference. All right, so we'll move on to the silver sword here. Silver and white was the goal for this one. I'll again utilize the black as well, and instead of doing the stippling for the texturing, I'll do some lines, some like scratches, you could say. So I'll utilize a silver, a white, and the black, and we'll use scratches for texture on this one. And then at the end, I'll do a little bit of blending on the edge of the blade. So same technique. I start at the bottom of the hilt, or the bottom of the blade near the hilt, and that's where I bring in my base coat for the blade, and I'll take that up through the blade and start to taper that off to create that gradient into the black, and it'll start to look more transparent and then eventually disappear into just black on the top. And then that's where I'll have a lot of the scratches to create that texture. The edge of the blades again, I will use white this time, but this is where I'll do some blending to create sword sign. It'll create a sword shine that you see in a lot of Warhammer sword painting and stuff like that, where you basically opposite the shiny part with the black part on either side of the blade. I'll show some examples here so you kind of know what I'm saying. Very crudely done on my part, but it just is to show how easy it is to do, or quick it is to do these things. In reference to that shine on the sword, when you're doing any kind of art project, it is wise to help yourself as much as possible and use a reference. It's never wrong to use a reference. It gives you a starting point. You shouldn't be expected to automatically know and imagine things in your head on your own, and then be able to put them down on whether it's paper you're drawing, a canvas you're painting on, or miniature figure or sword or whatever. Use a reference, save yourself the trouble. So the scratching texture, this can be a little more tricky. You're going to want a fairly thin paint, and definitely going to want a smaller brush than what I'm using here. So my brush is, it's old and it's not good. It's my base coat painting brush, but I like it. I like how it feels when I paint with it. So I'm just going to use it quickly in this video, but if you are going to do this, maybe experiment first on what you like, but I suggest a thinner brush. But basically you just want to, if you have your thinned silver paint and you want to put it down either the stipple or a scratch, you just do a slight scratch like this. You don't want to drag it all the way across. You don't want to put a lot of pressure on the bristles of the brush onto the object to create those tiny little scratches in the blade. And sometimes it can be hard to make it look organic. You'll want to go in different directions, or you can do any other patterns too. I tend to do the more organic scratches in all different directions. So, and another thing that might happen is if you're thinning your paints with water. So if your brush ends up getting waterlogged, you want to make sure you have paper towel nearby, so you can lightly drag your paintbrush through the paper towel to get any excess paint or water off that could flood any spot you start your painting off on your object. And I use the same technique here. I go over the scratches a few layers, and I leave the center black at the tip of the blade, and I'll move in those scratches as we paint. And this is just gonna, from a distance, it'll create a scratch texture. It looks pretty cool when it's all done. I'm not relegating the scratches just to where the black is. I'm going up and down the whole blade. It's just easier to see up in the black. Kind of a little extra thing here. These blended lines on the side of the silver blade on the edges are for power swords. I see them a lot in power swords and Space Marines, and for like Warhammer 40k, stuff like that. And the basic idea is to do a bright, a dark, and then a bright when you split the blade in half, and then do the opposite on the other side. And you really want to use dark and light colors or for highlights. So I quickly did that with the silver here. So the white highlights that I was suggested to use, I use as the high point for this power sword look. I picked out a few areas, and then I put my white down and I feathered it out towards the bottom and then up towards the top. And I did that in both cases, on both sides. You might not get it the first try. Say you put too much white. Well, what you do is you get your black and you put that down and try to feather that back in. So you're able to take colors and go back and forth and do this until you get it right. That's how you get those really, really smooth blends of colors. It took me 3 minutes to do this, so it's very, very rough, but that's the basic idea, is using the darkest color you want, the lightest color you want, and blending them together. And while you're blending these, you can always use your brush, if you clean it off, to wipe away some paint too. As long as you do it fast enough. If you don't do it fast enough and you wipe away paint, you can get like a coffee stain effect where the outline of the paint has dried a little bit and it'll sit there. That's not good. You'll just have to paint over that. But that is an option for blending as well. So I finish each blade off with a edge highlight. Typically that's done with a brighter color. You see that it's a lot on Space Marines as well. They'll edge highlight their armor, which is notorious for taking ages. But I'm just going to use a silver quick and dirty edge highlight, and then edge highlight on the blue one with silver. So that's a quick tutorial on how to utilize your thin paints with these different methods. We went over this finished product on these swords. Took about 20 minutes, and I only used like 3 colors technically. I did use the black, but I didn't have it on my palette. So as long as you know how to thin your paints properly to be able to use these techniques, it's easy to practice these on just about anything that you have. And these are some of the foundations of miniature painting. When you really want to start to learn about what you're doing and make something look good to your liking and stuff like that. So in this video we went over laying down base coats, layering color to create transparencies, different types of simple texturing, and we also went over blending. Let me know how you think I did. Are there any of these techniques that you think would be fun to try or that you've never tried? Is there any other beginner-friendly painting subjects that I should go over? I have a few, but let me know if you have anything down in the comments, or any comments at all on how you think I did. If you want to stick around and see some more tutorials or watch some of the projects I'm doing, please go down below, comment, like, subscribe, share the channel with some of your painting friends, and we will see you next time. Bye.